Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to do another color along in Meine Reise durch Afrika. And I thought maybe we would tackle these two pages. So I'm thinking of doing kind of a darker background with a golden cat, and then maybe a golden sky type of page here. So, kind of indicating dark and light, but we shall see. But I am going to be working with pan pastels, and that's going to give me a little flexibility to kind of play, because I've had various thoughts. I thought about doing kind of a sunset page, with maybe a darker purple pyramids blending into pink, and then more shadowy areas down here. But then I really want to do a golden cat. So I'm trying to decide, do I want to make the two pages match like I've done in the past with, where is it? Like here, where I use the same color scheme, or do I not care? And it's going to be more like this, where they're totally unrelated, and that's okay too. So I think what I'm going to do is start off here and then think about this side. So grab your pan pastels. Now, if you don't have pan pastels, go ahead and watch the video, and when we get to the pencil portion, the pencil colors that I choose then, you can just use for the entire page. The reason I like working with pan pastels, not only for the erasability, but they simply are a time saver and a hand saver for me, because I can fill up the page with the color and use the pencil simply for details. But if you don't have pan pastels, you could use Mungio chalk pastels, like these, or any sort of these type of pastels. Am I being helpful? No. Something like that. You could definitely use, match up your colors the best that you can to what I'm doing. I prefer pan pastels because, number one, they're not as messy. Number two, you get way more pigment, more bang for your buck. When you put on pan pastels, you get rich, beautiful colors. They go on like a dream, and it's just one of those things where you can see I've used this one, but I haven't even made a dent in this. I've had a lot of these pan pastels for years. So, have I blathered on enough? Yes, I have. So let's get started, shall we? Grab a wet wipe. You'll need that, a paper towel, and your soft tools, your pan pastels, and let's go. Okay, guys, so I am going to start with yellow oxide tint. And I'm just going to lay, well, first of all, always test your little applicators if they're not new to make sure you don't have any other colors down. Now I'm going to do an entire base layer on this cat with this color. This is going to give me a nice base for the gold. And then I'll deepen up the colors, and I'll add a little white to add my highlights. That's what I really like about pan pastels too, is that you can go dark to light, you can go light to dark. They're really forgiving. And while I do try and stay in the lines, if you get out of the lines, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. But look how fast this is to cover that area. And if I get it on the eye, not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and do this piece, even though we'll definitely have shading. We can add that later. Okay. Now we'll be coming back. I'm also going to put it, what I'm thinking is almost like this is glowing. So we're going to have some light on this side of this pole. And on this side. Probably should have started with this. I try and keep my hand up because I will pick up the pan pastels on my hand if I put them in there, and you can smear. They're not awful that way, but you just want to be careful. Okay. I'll probably put a lot more bright in there as well. So, let me think. So I think here, this little piece here would also be glowing or bright. It's okay if it gets a little into the hieroglyphics. It's okay if it gets a little into that box. Okay, how far out do we want it to go? Maybe just a touch. But see, I'm doing a lot lighter here. Okay, so next up is yellow oxide. Get me a little applicator here. Make sure, see, they'll be stained, but it doesn't matter as long as you kind of test and make sure you're okay. All right. So we're going to kind of work this color. I am going to use a little colorless blender. This helps this color go on a little smoother and just blend and just make it a smooth application. Now I'm going to be coloring a lot of this over with other colors. This is kind of like the base color that I want. Look how much pigment is possible with these. And I will show you, I mean, can you see how much I'm picking up? It's not even making a dent in our pan pastel here. You can see, you can just barely see where I'm even touching it. So these are going to last a long time. Kind of sound like a broken record if you've ever watched me use these. I think they're such an underrated medium for coloring books, because payoff versus the amount of work you have to do is just so little. Or, well, the payoff is big for the work you have to do, which is little. Didn't do a very good job of explaining that. And forgiving, because if you make a mistake and you say, oh, I don't want that color, you can change it so easily. See, and that colorless blender just allows this to move a little bit without diluting the color. So like if you used white, it would dilute it and make it paler. This, it doesn't make it paler. It just makes it go a little farther and make a little bit more of a gradient. Okay. So next up, let's go to yellow ochre shade. Now I will say yellow ochre and yellow oxide, these are, if you look at the numbers, 270.3, 270.5. They've changed the name, so don't be confused. Oxide and ochre are the same color family. There's 4 in each set, so there's a tint, the main color, a shade, and a shade extra dark. So, but I've noticed that, and I think, like I told you before, my set is much older. A lot of these I got years ago, and I think they've changed the color names, not the color. The color's the same. Starting to get a little darker here. See how I can kind of blend that out. Not too worried that it's a little blotchy, because we're gonna go over stuff. We're gonna be adding more colors. I'm just building up my darks here. So this will be the lightest color in this middle section. And here where I've got it on my cat, you can take a kneaded eraser and just erase that, just tap it off. If we went out of the lines, we can, here where I went out of the lines, you can just erase it. So forgiving. Okay, let's move on to our deeper color. Here is the yellow oxide extra dark. Now notice I'm using the same applicator. You can wipe it off if you want to, if you still have a lot of one color on there. I don't think it's that big of a deal when you're staying in the same color family. Now, it would be a big deal if I had been using blue and I wanted to use yellow. You can do that. You just have to make sure you have wiped them off, right? I'm going to get in here with our darker color. I'm going to tap off where I got it a little bit too too far out. Okay, next I'm going to go in with raw umber shade. Don't stick your finger in it, Wendy. I want to darken up these corners. So I'm not going to bring it out as far. Okay, and then just a touch of this raw umber extra dark. So I am barely tapping, and I'm probably going to tap off once on my paper or on my paper towel, just as a test to see, because we don't want to overpower it. We don't want to do it too much. Kind of using the artist's dots as my guide. See how she has more dots here, indicating that it's darker. Okay, I'm going to tap that off a little bit, go back to just the shade, blend that out a little bit. Decide how dark do you want this to be, right? Okay, I'm just working my way back. This is orange extra dark. Because I want this all to be darker than our cat. And I kind of like that it's a little more warm, right? These are really cool colors, and then these are warm. And the idea is this cat's going to be glowing, and so right here on this edge is probably going to be lighter, right? So I may even go in with this light and lighten it up just a little on the edge there. If I have this too dark and let's say I can't get that light enough, take your kneaded eraser and make a little line like that, and just go right along the edge. Got a little on the cat there too. But I can tap it along there, or maybe make a point. That might work a little better. This is kind of cleaning up our cat a little, but also here where we got it in the ear. See, I can lighten that up a lot. I think that's probably good because we want a little glow around him. And then we just want to kind of keep working on our blend here. Not super loving it. Go back and forth with your colors. Get it the way you want it. See, unlike colored pencils, you have the ability to continue to adjust and play. And the darker this is on the side here, the more this will look like a glow. But you want it kind of realistic. And maybe we need a little bit of a blend. To get the right color. And you can do this until you've set it. Once you set it, then that's it. Add just a little bit of that gold here. This yellow oxide. Okay. All right, what do we think of that? Do we like it? This piece right here I'm going to fix with pencil because it's really small. Same with here and here. Okay, so now, so while I have this extra dark out, I am going to go in and very tippy top, or just on the very tip, get a little dark. And I'm going to put it up here in the top of these. Oh, whatever you call this. This thing. You know, the official word. This thing. A little bit more here. Okay, and we're going to put a little here in the bottom. Okay, now taking our lighter applicator, I am going to go in with, I think, a little mix of these two. So I'm gonna dip it in here. I'm gonna dip it in here. I'm gonna dip it in the colorless blender, and I'm gonna blend out So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and blend those so we don't have excess dark. Okay, now I'm going to go in with my light. A little bit of this golden color. We can fix this with pencil too to get our blend. Okay, so I'm going to wipe that completely off till it wipes pretty clean. Then I'm going to go in with just a little bit of this light in the middle. I'm going to have to wipe off a little bit because it's going to pick up some of those other colors. Okay. I think I'm going to go in with this orange extra dark. Now obviously the better job you do here the less erasing you have to do. I'm going to put a little dark in that too. Just want to darken that up just a little. Okay. And come in with this. I want to get it darker here on this outside edge. You see, I'm not really caring about the details right now because I'm going to use those with pencil, but I am wanting to get my values per se in. I want to get the darks in. See how I tapped a little bit of the yellow when I went to blend this? Gives me a little more of that golden. Okay. I'm liking how this is turning out. I think maybe get a little of this color in here. Down here. I think even a light layer. Because this is setting a little further back, right? Definitely darker up here. Okay. I think a little bit of this color here. Okay. I am going to take a minute and clean it up just a little, and I'll be right back. You've seen me do it. You don't need to see me do it all over. Okay, y'all. I tidied up a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is, oh, I kind of missed some up here, but we'll get them later. What I'm going to do is work on our little cat here. Now the key to things looking shiny is you need to have a lot of contrast. So we're going to be using white. We're going to use white, and we're going to use darks. So I'm going to start with, I think a little bit of this dark here. So making sure I don't have too much left over from that extra dark. We don't want to quite go in that deep yet. So I'm going to put it a little bit here on the haunch. And once again, pan pastels are great because if I get the shading wrong and it looks terrible, I can erase it, start all over. So we're going to get a little dark here, maybe a little touch here, a little bit here on the back. Okay, let's do a little bit here on the ear. I'm going to okay. Now, in my opinion, it doesn't matter as much about the placement of your shadows and your lights as it does the contrast between the two. So I'm going to use this. This is the orange extra dark. I'm going to run it right along the side here. I think this piece right here is probably gold. Okay. Now, next I am going to go in with my white. And I want a big contrast here. And I'm not getting it, so where's my eraser? I am going to actually remove as much of what I laid down with that yellow. Now, so you got to be careful. Don't use your hands to flick your smudgies. You want to blow or tap, but you got to be careful with that too, because you don't want to, not to be rude, but you don't want to blow spit on your page either. So because if you get this wet, it will become permanent. It will leave little marks. And I have definitely done that. Okay, so what I want to look at is, see my hand here? Make sure you can see it. I need to wipe that off with my wet wipe. And get that all off because I'm smudging all over the place. And we want to avoid that. And then I want to make sure my hand is good and dry before I go back to working on my page. Okay, but you can see now we should be able to get our white. Now I've got a lot of white there. We certainly don't need that much white, but we want white in our highlights here. I find that if I make like a little triangle thing, that's a good way to get into those harder to reach areas. I want some right here. Might as well do it all. And maybe some right along this area. And on the bridge of the nose. Okay. And it's going to be easier for me to reapply my dark than to try and dip into the toes. So I'm going to probably do some of that with pencil. But I want to go in with my darks, my really dark now. But I really like learning how to do this shading and the gold with pan pastel because I can make mistakes and I don't have to fear it quite so much. Put some dark in here. Oops, did I tap into the white? Yep. Now, I need more yellow. So, I am going to go in with my, that was my, okay. I want some more of this yellow color. Kind of and I'm just going back and forth between my colors. So this was the lightest, the yellow oxide tint. I want to maintain this white shiny area here. And do you see how that's kind of starting to look more glowy? You really need the contrast. It's going to make it shiny. And when I get done, I'm going to use a Posca to really drive home the shine, right? I'm going to put some dark right there to really emphasize that light. See how it makes that light look lighter? I think I need some dark right here by this light. Okay. I think I want a little white right here. Guys, I don't have all the answers with this. I never been to art school. I don't know. I've obviously watched some tutorials and different things over the years, but it's also about what you like. If you get online, look at some reference. Look at some reference photos of shiny things, and you'll see that there is no one answer. I really like how this looks. I'm going to smooth this little piece out just a little, but I really like how his haunch looks. Not as much the tail. I think the tail needs the white. Okay, I think I'm going to use this Mono Zero. You got to be careful with erasers like these, because you can leave a little texture. Be careful. Flicking. A good way to do it is to lift your book, give it a tap. If you use a brush, ever so lightly, don't, you know how you push down and flick? We don't want to do that. But I'm liking that a little better. And I think I'm going to go in with a combination of this yellow oxide and this one. I'm going to mix them right there on the brush, or on the palette there. Okay. Because it's all about the contrast, right? Okay. All right, do we like that? Do we not like that? What about this piece? I feel like maybe it needs a little darker. No. Oh, not white. I feel like we got a weird shine going on there. Your shine doesn't have to be any given shape, but you want it to make sense. You don't want like part of the shine to like have like a weird angle or something. Okay. I'm not 100% loving this. I feel like So I think I'm gonna go over this stuff and then add in like our highlight. Obviously we want this piece white, that's the eye. We want to shine. Maybe a shine here. But okay, what about down here? Okay, we definitely don't want them to have stripy legs. So we'll blend that out a little and then touch up our white again. Okay, and I think we need to do a little okay. And then I hope you guys find this helpful because obviously I am not an expert in shine. I like working with pastels, but I'm not an expert in those either. But if you like how this turns out, like I said, you don't have to use pan pastels. You can do this with pencil. Okay. I think maybe add a little shine right here. Right. Now I think this is going to look better once we once we get all of our detail in, right? Because we have no detail, so everything just kind of looks messy and yucky, right? So we gotta do that. So I'll be back. I'm gonna fix up my mess, and then we'll be back for the next stage. Okay, you guys. So I think at this point I'm gonna go ahead and spray my page. Now, one of the things that I want to caution you is when you first start working with pan pastels, teach yourself some good habits. Always make sure, double check, that you have cleaned up anything, any smudges on either page, right? We want to make sure that we don't have any smudges. We want to make sure we don't have any marks that we don't want to be permanent. Because while you can cover over this with colored pencil, we don't want to try and have to color over, let's say I wanted this piece right here to be like a bright yellow. We don't want to have to try and cover like a dark smudge because it's going to make it not look good. So we definitely want to take extra care. Like for example, right here, I can see that I missed this piece, cleaning it up, part of the wing there. Now that might not make a difference. It kind of depends on what I choose to do here with these wings. But you just want to double check that kind of stuff and get it as clean as you can. I always take my kneaded eraser with me when I go to spray because inevitably I spray outside, and so now I've got a whole different lighting, and sometimes I see things that I don't see right here because I've been looking at it, right? Have you ever noticed that? Like sometimes you walk away and then you come back and you go, oh, I really like that, or it just hits different, right? And so I always take my kneaded eraser with me. The other thing is don't spray it too close. So I use this workable fixative, and I apologize to those of you that watch my color alongs a lot. I tend to repeat myself because I don't know if this is the first video you're watching or the 10th. So, and it's always, in my opinion, good advice, but I sprayed my last one. I've been doing this a long time, but I sprayed my last one about this far away. You can't tell, about 6 inches away, right? And really you need to be about 10 or 12 inches away. And then you let it dry and spray another one. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I sprayed it about 6 inches away in retrospect, right? Because when I started working on it, it gave it a lot of tooth. And more tooth than I really would have wanted. So keep that in mind. Now, as far as like some of these other things, we can touch things up, and I can get into like here, I haven't gotten quite into that corner. I'm not worried about it. Some goldenrod will take care of that. It's just going to fill that in really nicely. What you do want to make sure is you don't have any eraser. Like if you use the mono eraser and it leaves the little, those things, you want to make sure you don't have any of those on your paper. You want to make sure that you don't have any, things outside of the lines, and that you can live with it before you spray it. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I forgot one of the more important things I was going to do. This is called Light Gold, and it is a pearlescent pan pastel. I am going to put some of this on my cat. If you don't have this, don't fret. You could use Wink Stella or something like that. I'm not putting it everywhere. I'm trying to avoid my white highlights. but I think this is going to give it just a little bit of shimmer and shine. And I've been meaning to try these for a while. And I just really haven't had the occasion. Okay, let's take a look at that. I'm going to zoom you way, way in. I'll try and zoom in more when I edit. But let's see if we can see. Do you see any pearlescent? It's pretty subtle. I can catch it in certain lights. But it's definitely subtle. I think Winkostella, the gold Winkostella, would essentially do the same thing. I am going to, where is it? Put just a little more here. There is this one too, which is rich gold. And I don't, let's try it. Maybe right here. It's just a little brighter gold. I think. We'll put some highlights of that on it. There's also a copper and I think bronze. Let me know in the comments if you want to see all the pan pastels available, or at least the ones that I have, because I won't swear I have them all, but I have 98% of them. Okay, let's see if that made any difference. Okay. Maybe. It definitely brightened it a little bit. Okay. All right, I'm going to go spray. I'll be back. Oh, last thing before I pop out, make sure you tape off the other side of this or you'll get spray on it. So I wouldn't want any spray on this until I start. Okay, I'm out. Okay guys, I'm back. And I think what I'm going to do is, while I got my pan pastels out, I'm going to use a lot of these same colors over here on this page. Now, I've already walked you through the steps, so I might do a voiceover, but for now, I'm just going to get the pan pastels onto our page. Okay, you guys, so I thought maybe we would start with some fun facts about the Giza pyramids, and I'm going to start with basic stats and then some interesting facts about it, and then I'll read a few African folktales. So let's get started. So just some basic facts. The Great Pyramid is the largest of over 100 pyramids in Egypt, which were all built as tombs for the pharaohs. The pyramids are still standing, and they've survived for over 4.5 centuries due to the special mortar to fix the heavy bricks into place. The pyramids were built using millions of stones, so something like 2.5 million blocks of granite and limestone, which is crazy when you consider how old this is and there was no modern machinery or anything.
The pyramids were aligned to true north. The Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned structure in existence, facing true north with only 3/60th of a degree of error. Now, I, for one, find this absolutely fascinating because with modern technology, I could see how you could maybe be that accurate. But how do you do that when you don't have, like, computers and different things like that? I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. The pyramids were once thought to be visible from the moon. The original pyramid with its casing stones would have reflected light so powerfully it would have been visible from the moon as a shining star. The pyramid's builders ate meat, bread, and beer. Remains of butchered ducks, sheep, pigs, and cattle found in the workers' village indicate the builders ate the meat, bread, and beer. And they estimate that it would have taken 20 to 30 years. So those are just some basic facts. But I wanted to look at some of the what they call surprising facts or interesting facts. So it says the step pyramid of Djoser is the oldest Egyptian pyramid. It is the very first pyramid built by ancient Egyptians, and it's the earliest large monument built with stone. Earlier royal tombs were constructed from mud brick. Djoser, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, sourced granite from the far south at Aswan and limestone from the other side of the Nile River in order to oversee the construction. The Aswan granite was used to line the king's chamber inside the pyramid. Excuse me. The step pyramid's construction could have been meant to act as a staircase to move his earthly body to the afterlife. The red pyramid was Egypt's first smooth-sided pyramid. So originally pyramids were built for pharaohs to protect their sarcophagus and guide them towards the sun in the afterlife. So the red pyramid is its first true pyramid, meaning it was smooth-sided. It was designed to resemble the sun's rays. It's the flattest pyramid of ancient Egypt with a gentle slope, which unfortunately made it easy for robbers to walk along and steal the white limestone that covered the red underneath. The 3 Giza pyramids, is it Giza? Should I have looked that up? Yes. One moment. Okay, it is Giza. So, the 3 Giza pyramids are aligned. The Great Pyramid of Khufu in the northeast of the necropolis of Khufu's pyramid, and to the smaller pyramid of Menkaure in the southeast. They are all aligned diagonally. The structures were arranged deliberately so each of the corners pointed directly to the Temple of Ra and are in concert with the constellation Orion. So the pharaohs of the 4th dynasty believed themselves directly descended from Ra, so by angling their pyramids perfectly, their tombs were a natural part of the daily life cycle of the sun and the heart of their religion. Pyramids had a secret chamber where the deceased soul rested. Just as important to the pharaohs as their pyramid was a secret chamber called a serdab. Sorry, had to get my spam call out of the way. Do y'all get those? I get like a bazillion. Okay. A serdab was close to the pharaoh's mummy, where his Ka statue, the statue holding the king's life essence after death, was kept. Ancient Egyptians believed that if the pharaoh's mummy was destroyed, his spirit could live on inside the Ka statue. Given the very real threat of tombs being robbed and looted, the serdab and the Ka statue were hugely important to the pharaoh maintaining a pleasant and peaceful afterlife. The pyramid texts are the oldest known religious texts in the world. 200 years after the pyramid Menkaure was built, the pyramid of King Yunus came the pyramid of King Yunus. On the walls of his burial chamber, the pyramid texts were found, magical spells in hieroglyph form meant to keep his soul from leaving his body and commencing its journey to the aftermath. I think it's really interesting. If you Google hieroglyphic alphabet, there's literally, like, if you're looking at the page that we're coloring right now, each of those symbols is like a letter of the alphabet. And you can spell out your name in hieroglyphics. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I spelled my name out. Because why not? Okay. Tourists and Cairo locals attempt to climb the top of the Great Pyramid more often than you think. Most are arrested or detained on site before letting go without a charge because under Egyptian law, climbing the pyramid is prohibited but not illegal. In 2016, a 16-year-old German tourist was able to climb the pyramid in just over 8 minutes, while recently a local threw rocks at authorities and damaged the wooden mast at the top used to measure the Great Pyramid's height. The last of the Egyptians' pyramids was made from mud bricks. His pyramid, let's see. Pyramids were actually white. Casing stones displayed the precision of Egyptian pyramid building. These stones were white, polished limestone caps that covered the stone we see today. They locked together intimately, giving each pyramid a beautifully flat, smooth impression. Casing stones reflected the sun like a mirror and shined brightly like burnished jewels. The casing stones are now mostly gone as they were often stolen, repurposed to build other monuments, or were damaged by seismic activities such as the massive earthquake that struck Cairo in 1308 CE. A sultan attempted to destroy Should I look that word up? Yes. Okay, it's called Menkaure. So a sultan attempted to destroy Menkaure's pyramid. During the 12th century, the second sultan of Egypt and son of Saladin made an aborted attempt to demolish the Great Pyramids of Giza. They employed a massive crew of workmen to bring down Menkaure's temple, but the cost, time, and sheer physical difficulties the pyramid stones and sand presented meant the job was scrapped within a year. The Sultan's efforts resulted only in a vertical gouge left in the north face of the smallest Great Pyramid. Professional construction teams, not slaves, built the pyramids. The Great Pyramids were built by workmen, not slaves, despite the claims of the famous Greek historian Herodotus in his writing. Entire towns were built alongside the pyramids where farming families often worked on the pharaoh's amazing building projects while waiting for crops to grow. In recent years, archaeologists have found evidence of these towns' professional builders, stonemasons, and their tools. Worker cemeteries have been excavated close to the pyramids and have also been explored in Luxor and the Valley of Kings. 2.3 million limestone blocks were used for the Great Pyramid That's crazy. It took over 23 years to complete, with calculations suggesting work crews would have laid an average of 12 stones every hour during the time frame. Those got to be big stones.
Okay. Just like before,
That's
I'm going to
kinda
use
crazy.
this rich gold
Over the lifespan of the project,
And I'm
more
gonna
than
put it
100,000 people were
on my
employed, with a
pyramids
peak
here.
workforce of at least 1,000. The original entrance to the Great Pyramid is 17 meters from the ground. However, tourists enter via the Robbers Tunnel, created in 820 CE when the Sultan of Cairo's men broke
Just
into
on
it to
this
find
back
loot.
side.
The Great Pyramid draws as many as 14 million visitors each year and pours almost 9 billion into the economy. It is the only one of the original 7 wonders of the world that remains standing. There's more that we need to learn about the pyramids, with more questions. Despite many theories, ramps and pulleys,
think we should put
water-aided
it-
stone
I'm gonna
sleds,
use
rolling wooden ramps,
the
and
lighter
massive
gold.
causeways, there's no
Maybe
concrete
put
evidence
it
explaining exactly how these
on
giant stones
this one.
were lifted into place and secured. Researchers have been unable to copy the mortar-binding pyramid stones despite understanding what it's made of.
Darker gold
Scientists
here.
have found possible hidden chambers using heat imagery and satellite technology,
maybe
but so
some white
far
gold.
haven't figured out what's in them or their purpose. So much of the great Egyptian pyramids remains a mystery
guy,
for amateurs
the
and
little
professionals alike. Okay, so here's some quick facts. The Pyramid of Giza stands 138 meters high. It has a volume of 2.5 million cubic meters. Each side of the pyramid's base measures 230 meters long.
Don't
Over
do that.
2.3 million blocks of stone make it up. The heaviest of the pyramid's stone blocks weighs
Okay,
up
I'm going to
to
use this
80
light
tons.
gold and
Okay.
go up here
How'd they move these, you guys?
on my pyramids.
That is
On
crazy.
this side of the pyramids. So on the
Let's
lighter
see.
side, we use the light gold.
So we talked about how long it took.
On the darker side, we use
The pyramid lost
rich
its
gold.
title as the tallest
Okay,
building in the
I'm gonna go
world
spray.
to England's Lincoln
right back.
Cathedral in 13 AD. Okay. Let's see. The pyramid weighs an estimated 6 million tons. Wow. The base of the pyramid is only around 15 millimeters from being perfectly flat. See, once again, it's like how were they able to be this accurate? The corners of the pyramid's base they all point to one of the 4 directions of the compass. I mean, it's crazy how accurate this was. I don't know. It is beyond my comprehension. Okay, for those of you that didn't have pan pastels or don't have them, you can just simply use the colored pencils that I show here. Now, you can choose if you want to lay down a light, like a cream color. The problem with that is that the pencils don't blend the same over pencil as they do pan pastel. And so it may dilute your colors more than the pan pastel does. So I would encourage you just to use these and go from dark to light and then light back out to dark, just like you would any other time that you're coloring. Hope that makes sense. That way you end up with it looking similar to what it does now. Now the difference is here I just need to really essentially do 1 layer, right? Maybe 2 over an area. Whereas if you're doing the entire thing with pencils, you will, especially with Polychromos, you're probably going to need to do more layers. So just keep that in mind as you work on this. Now I'm going to mention it since I'm going to read another story. When I color the little wings there on that ornament, remember where I erased earlier and I said that I had made a mistake? Well, I had not made a mistake. I made a mistake in erasing it, and now I'm going to double down on the mistake and I'm going to color it with blue at some point. So keep that in mind. Don't do that. You're going to color it back in with that brown ochre color. But my thoughts here is that I want the sides of our picture on both sides to be darker, moving into the lighter tones, just kind of creating a gradient blend here. I am simply just kind of smoothing out the pan pastels and darkening them up a little bit. I want to add a little more deeper values here. And so going in with the Van Dyke Brown and the dark sepia is going to give me that. And then the rest of the colors, I am just really lightly blending, right? And just kind of, like I said, just kind of smoothing things out where I'm not really trying to change the look so much as just add those little finishing touches, right? Tidy it up, so to speak. And I really like how it turned out. I'm laying my hand down simply because even though I have sprayed, occasionally maybe you miss a spot, or I might pick up some pan pastels off the table. Also, just with your own pencils, you can get those on your hand and smear too. So I'm just trying to keep things a little tidier and a little less distracting for you, because I'm trying to guide you into what I'm working on, and it's kind of hard when it's a 2-page spread. Your mind is just simply kind of drawn, to look at everything, right? But essentially, that's all I'm doing here. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Great Sphinx of Giza. So the size, it's one of the world's largest monolithic sculptures, measuring at 240 feet long and 66 feet high. It's carved from a single block of limestone. It's located on the Giza Plateau on the west bank of the Nile in Giza, Egypt. It faces east. It has the head of a human and the body of a lion, and is adorned with a royal headdress. The Sphinx was carved from a natural outcropping of rock around the time of the construction of the Pyramid of Khafre. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Great Sphinx was created around 2500 BC for the pharaoh Khafre. The Great Sphinx has been restored with layers of limestone blocks. Pigment residue suggests that the Great Sphinx was painted. Okay, so let's talk about, there's some other little facts here. So it's in the southwest of modern-day Cairo. Its official name is the Great Sphinx of Giza, and it is based on an Egyptian mythological creature of the same name. It is the world's oldest monumental sculpture. It's the largest monolith statue on Earth. Thutmose IV supposedly rediscovered it after falling asleep on it. It took 3 years to create. Now, that's crazy because if you think about in the United States, they, there's in South Dakota, there's the, what's the Indian chief that they're building? Okay, it is Crazy Horse. And I have seen it. I saw it as a kid, and then, I don't know, within the last 10 years, Lonnie and I were up there and saw it again. So I wanted to look up the stats on that, just out of curiosity. So it is 641 feet long and 563 feet high. Now, it was started in 1948, and it's still not done. So I find it absolutely wild that they built the Sphinx in 3 years. Because, like, how does that even work? They're much better workers, I guess. I think there was some money problems having to do with the Crazy Horse Monument as well. And it's not made out of limestone, which I believe is probably a softer rock, but I could be wrong. But anyway, back to what we were saying. I mean, it looks absolutely stunning. So it says it's 66 feet high and 240 feet long and 63 feet wide. So its head is quite, it says it's unclear whether the head was reconstructed because it's not really proportionate to its body. So that's interesting. It's missing a nose. Okay, it says, although we don't know for sure, scientist Mark Lanier estimated it would have taken 3 years to finish the monument using chisels and hammers if 100 men were working on it. Researchers now know some of it was constructed because they did find abandoned toolkits near the worksite. They believe Egyptians may have intended it to be larger, as they also left large stone blocks that had not been processed nearby, and they uncovered leftover lunches that consisted of cattle, sheep, and goat meat. Many are curious as to why they may have left in such a hurry. Like, how would you even know? Like, this many years later? I got questions. Okay. The front paws are separate blocks of limestone. It's believed that the entire Sphinx was constructed from a single piece of limestone that had been left over during the construction of the pyramids. The single major piece of limestone was exposed when workers dug out a horseshoe-shaped quarry in the desert floor. So it used to be painted a primary palette of red, yellow, and blue. It's believed that the face was red, the headdress was brilliant yellow. If you did get a chance to see it, you'll see some residual red color around its ear. Okay? No one knows why its nose is missing. One of the Sphinx's most distinctive characteristic is the nose that appears broken off. It's believed the original nose was at least 1 meter long. No one truly knows how it was broken off, though there have been some discredited rumors, such as one involving Napoleon. It used to be said that Napoleon's troops shot off the nose with a cannon when they invaded Egypt in 1798. However, drawings uncovered before Napoleon's invasion showed that the nose was already missing. Another theory is that the Sufi Muslims sawed it off in the late 1400s in a protest. That has been not proven true or false. It once sported a beard. The British Museum is home to a portion of the beard that was once set on the Great Sphinx's chin. It is believed he lost it mostly due to erosion. It's uncertain if it was created with a beard initially or if workers added it later. French archaeologists believe the latter, and it has the support of the British Museum. This is thought to be because it would have suffered significantly more damage than it shows if it had been built simultaneously. It was most recently restored in 1988 because a 700-pound shoulder piece plunged to the ground. The damage was a result of a 1933 restoration effort. It got a new headdress, and the Egyptian government also repaired the head and neck. And unfortunately, restorations didn't hold up well. So that's just a little bit about the Sphinx. I would love to go there and see these amazing things. I don't know if now is the time. Is there ever a peaceful time? I'm not sure. Once upon a time, there was a cat, a wild cat, who lived all by herself out in the bush. After a while, she got tired of living alone and took herself a husband, another wild cat who she thought was the finest creature in all of the jungle. One day, as they strolled together along the path through the tall grass, swish, out of the grass jumped Leopard, and Cat's husband was bowled over, all fur and claws, into the dust. "Oh," said the cat, "I see my husband is covered in dust and is not the finest creature in all of the jungle. It is Leopard." So Cat went to live with the leopard. They lived together very happily until one day, as they were hunting in the bush, suddenly, whoosh, out of the shadows leapt a lion right onto Leopard's back and ate him all up. "Ooh," said the cat, "I see Leopard is not the finest creature in all the land. It is Lion." So Cat went to live with Lion. They lived together happily until one day, as they were stalking through the forest, a large shape loomed overhead, and fa-choo! Elephant put one foot on top of Lion and squished him flat. "Oh, I see Lion's not the finest creature in all the jungle. It is Elephant." So Cat went to live with Elephant. She climbed up onto his back and sat purring on his neck right between his two ears. They lived together very happily until one day, as they were moving through the tall reeds down by the river, patwa! There was a large bang, and Elephant sank down into the ground. Cat looked around, and all she could see was a small man with a gun. "Ooh, I see Elephant is not the finest creature in all of man. It is Man." So Cat walked after Man all the way to his home and jumped up onto the thatch of his hut. "At last," said Cat, "I have found the finest creature in all of the jungle." She lived up in the thatch of the hut very happily and began to catch the mice and rats that lived in the village, until one day, as she sat on the roof warming herself in the sun, she heard a noise from inside the hut. The voices of Man and his wife grew louder and louder until wow, 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 yo-wee! Came out Man, tumbling head over heels into the dust. "Aha," said the cat, "now I do know who is truly the finest creature in all of the jungle. It is Woman." She came down from the thatch, went inside the hut, and sat by the fire. That is where she has been ever since. Words as sweet as honey from Saint-Campi. In the early days, the monkeys were not so thin and nimble as they are today. They were furry little pot-bellied animals that moved slowly. It was such fun for the rascally Saint-Campi to creep up behind them and yank their long tails. This made the monkeys furious, and they would bombard him from high up in the trees with seeds and bits of branches as he lay on his back, basking in the sun. Saint-Campi did not like this monkey business one bit, and one day he decided to do something about it. "Dear friends," he said in a sweet voice with a twinkle in his wicked eyes, "I want to tell you a big secret. Don't you believe him. It's another wicked trick, warned the eldest monkey. But Sankambe begged and pleaded with the monkeys to hear him out about this very special secret. And because monkeys are naturally curious animals, they clambered slowly down the tree trunks and drew closer, step by monkey step. I would like a chance to do you a favor, he said, his voice as sweet as honey. Up there on the mountain next to the Great Lake is a cave, and deep inside the cave is an enormous beehive full of golden honeycomb, and I'm the only one that knows about it. Follow me, and I'll show you the way. The monkeys eagerly fell in line behind him, thinking only of the golden delight that was waiting for them. Eventually, Sankambe led them along a ledge to the mouth of the cave with an overhanging roof. Go inside, friends, he offered generously. But just as soon as the monkeys were inside, Sankambe started to stamp his feet hard so that the dull thuds echoed all around the cave. Oh, marula pips and beer calabashes, he screamed, pretending to be terrified. Friends, the roof is starting to collapse. Stretch your arms up high and hold up the roof. I will run to fetch some poles so that we can support it. Stand still just where you are and don't lose a muscle, and hold tight. The monkeys did exactly this, and they stood dead still, with their arms stretched above their heads to stop the roof from caving in. They stood and they stood because they dared not move, otherwise the roof of the cave would collapse on their very own heads. Oh, if only Sankambe would come quickly with the supports. But of course by this time Sankambe was trotting along down at the lake. What a bunch of monkeys, he hooted, and went to curl up in a spot of sunlight for an undisturbed afternoon snooze. All through the midday heat and right through the cooling night, while the stars lay white in the water of the great lake, there stood the monkeys like stone pillars holding up the roof of the cave with all of their might. It was only as the morning light began to glimmer in the east that the eldest monkey suddenly had a thought. He gingerly took one finger away and then another, then his whole hand, and then the other hand. He looked at the sweating faces of his family next to him and realized Sankambe had made fools of them all. One by one, the monkeys lowered their stiff, aching arms, and when they looked down at their bodies, they saw that their pot-belly figures had changed completely. After all the toil and sweat of stretching up to hold the roof of the cave, their bodies had become tall and slender. That's why, even today, monkeys are able to romp through the trees so swiftly. The message. This is the story of Full Moon, Tick, and Hare, and the message that Moon sent to the people a long, long time ago. This is no ordinary message that the Moon sent to the people. Indeed, it was a most important message because, you see, Moon does not really die. She comes back again, as we see each time at full moon. And Moon wanted the people to know this truth. Just as I die and come alive again, you shall die and live again. Moon decided that Tick should be the one to take this important message to the people. She knew that lazy Tick would just sit in the shade of a shrub and wait for a goat or a goat herd to come past, and then he would jump onto one of them and hitch a ride to Crawl where the fires were, and the message would reach the people in no time at all. So Tick was given the message to pass on. But unfortunately, Tick was not only lazy, he also did not see very well. When Tick departed from Moon with the message, it was still night. He crept under the nearest tuft of grass and slept until the goats started grazing. Here he awaited his opportunity. As the first shadow fell across the tuft of grass, Tick crept out, crawled up on the shin bone in front of him, and held on tight. But oh no, Tick had made a terrible mistake. As he kept repeating the message over and over to himself so as not to forget it, the earth disappeared from under him, and the trees and the milk bushes grew smaller and smaller. Only then did he realize that this goat had feathers instead of fur. The sand grouse squawked as she prepared to land on a faraway bush. She shook her feathers vigorously, and Tick flew through the air and landed on a tuft of reeds. That same evening, Moon peeped through the milk bushes on the far side, hoping to see the people dancing for joy at hearing the good news. But it was very quiet, and the fires were burning low. From the weeping of the children, she could hear that someone was very ill. Then Moon realized that Tick had not yet delivered the good news to the people. That night, a few drops of rain fell, so on the second day, the sand around Tick was humming with springbok and gembok, gamboling for joy. A shadow fell across the tuft of reeds where Tick sat waiting, and Tick thought, "This is it," as he clambered on. But oh no, this was not a goat whose shinbok Tick was attached. By the time Tick realized this, the gemsbok was already galloping past the kraal along the trail of raindrops yonder in the direction of the sunset. When the gemsbok stopped to graze in the late afternoon, Tick realized that another day had gone by without the message having been delivered. And now the kraal lay beyond the ridge, which was beyond the farthest ridge still. A while later, when Moon peeped through the milk bushes, she saw that the fires were even smaller on the previous evening, and she heard the people wailing. Someone was very, very ill indeed, and Moon realized that Tick had still not delivered her message of joy to the people. On the third day, while Tick was sitting on a sorrel plant, Hare came by to nibble the juicy leaves, and Tick told him about his problem. Hare, who was terribly inquisitive, immediately wanted to know what the message was, and Tick rattled it off. "Just as I, Moon, die, but come alive again, so shall you also die and live again." This is an important message, thought Hare to himself. If I can deliver it to the people, I shall forever be in favor with the moon. At once he offered to take Tick to the corral. They had hardly reached the nearest milk bushes when Hare gave his kaross, his furry blanket, a good shake, and Tick flew through the air in a blink of an eye. Hare called, "Out of my way," and hot-tailed it to the kraal to deliver the message to the people. However, whereas Tick was nearsighted, Hare was short-sighted, and all he thought about was fame and fortune he would receive for delivering the important message. He did not keep repeating it to himself as Tick had. He hot-footed it so that his ears and his fluffy white tail just glanced over the pebbles and the tufts of grass. But when he arrived to the kraal, all out of breath, Hare could not quite remember the message as Tick had told it to him. He kept repeating it, but the more he repeated it, the more the words were scrambled, and the more confused he became. Dusty and pale, he collapsed on the ground and delivered the following message to the people. "Just as I die and remain dead, so shall you die and perish." And all the people of the kraal began wailing and covering themselves in sand and ash. And at that very moment, the very, very sick man breathed his last breath. That night, when Moon peeped through the milk bushes, she did not see a single live coal. The corral was deserted. The people had all left. There was no sign of life. When she looked closely, she did not see Tick anywhere, but Hare was still at the fireplace repeating the scrambled message in a daze. Moon was furious. She grabbed a piece of burnt-out log and hit Hare across the face with it. Hare took such a fright that he dropped his kaross into the ashes of the fireplace. He snatched at it back and hit Moon in the face with it. Since that day, Hare has had a cleft palate, and the pale ash dust is still visible on Moon's face. Okay. Now, as I start to work on this, I thought about doing this one way, and then I changed my mind. So you're going to see me kind of start coloring and then just totally change my mind. So if you want to disregard this step here or these first couple steps here, there's a bunch of different ways that you can color these cobblestones or gemstones or whatever you want to call them. but I just decided that I just wanted it to look a little differently than how I was coloring it. So I'm just using an electric eraser to erase that, and I just opted to go with a simpler one. Now, I debated a long time about bringing this red color in because limited palettes are good, but I just felt like I wanted a little more contrast in the picture, and I felt like I debated on Christine, and I kind of chatted a little bit, and we looked at some color palettes, and she showed me one that had a coral color in it, and I thought it'd be really pretty, but it just ultimately didn't have the contrast that I was really looking for. And so I decided on this middle cadmium red. And if you notice, I use it very, very sparingly. There, basically the baubles and the little dots, like maybe indicating like rubies or something like that, in the smaller circle spots on the cat. And here I go in with the black just to deepen up that red a little bit. So when you add black, you want to add it very, very lightly. Just a very light layer. You can see how it darkened it all up. And then I go over it again with the red so that it looks more like, dark red. And I'm doing the exact same thing down here with this jewel on the breastplate. And then you're going to see when I move into the second page where I incorporate it. And I really like how it turned out. It's kind of subtle, but I think it just punches it up just a little bit, because these pages are ultimately very gold, right? And I kind of wanted that. I've seen some beautiful pages done where people do them in monotone colors, like blues or purples. And I love how they turn out. But I like how this one turns out too. So anyway, I'm just babbling right now about the red, but I wanted to mention it while we're at a good stopping spot. So while we're coloring, I thought I would read another African folktale. So this one's called The Mother Who Turned to Dust. Once upon a time, the sun had a daughter. Like her father, she was a star of great brilliance, and she lived in the greater brilliance of the sun. She wore shoes made of shimmering star shells, and on her fingers, around her ankles and wrists and neck, she wore sparklers collected from shooting stars. She shone brightly and lit up the void beyond the sun, known as the sky. She reigned over it and ruled with great wisdom, love, and compassion. One day, as she went about her rounds inspecting the unaccountable planets of the vast universe, she saw a planet in a faraway corner. It was way out, almost at the very fingertips of the sun's reach. Its colors were all shades of green and blue. She looked again, and then she spoke. "There on that planet," said the star to the sun, "that is where I want my throne. I want to spend my life in the richness of the green and the coolness of the blue." The sun sighed. He looked at the star's great brilliance and sighed again. His eyes could see many years into the future. "Everything is yours," he said. "You may go wherever you like. You may do whatever you want. Know this, though. You will have to shed most of your powers and leave them here. Your brilliant coat of pure light, your shoes of star shells, your anklets and bracelets and necklaces with the twinkling of evening and morning stars, you cannot take them with you. The sensitive green on the planet could never take the heat of your brilliance, and the blue would dry up completely. However, instead of your brilliant attire, you may have 3 wishes which will be granted unconditionally." "Very well," she said. "Let me think about it." She thought and thought for years and years, for that is the way with stars and sun in the vast universe. Everything takes years and years to happen, although to them it is really only like a twinkling. At last, when she had thought enough, her mind was made up. She agreed to shed her coat and to leave her cloak of dawn, her shoes of star shells, and her sandals of twilight, and her slippers of the afterglow of dusk. In a dazzling brilliance, she handed them to the sun. Then she said, "Now I'll go to the green and blue planet and be its mother. Take everything you need. Know that you will be greatly missed here, even though you will be in our sight daily. Know also that you will also be welcome here. Alas, our glare may not always be pleasant to you on that little planet in your new body." So all around the sun, the rings, anklets, bracelets, and necklaces of the star were strewn in a trail of stars, star shells, twinkle dust, and sparkles spreading across the sky like a trail of spilled milk. They were arranged so she could see them from the green and blue planet. Thus she would remember where she had come from. Finally she left, riding first on the shooting star that streaked across time and space. Later she rode on a single ray of light in the softness of a dawning day, but she still had a long way to go. With her she had taken a hoe, a mortar and pestle, a winnowing basket, a water pot, a cooking pot, plates made of bamboo and wood, a little axe, a mat, and a great covering cloth. At last she rode on the first beam of light that was to reach the green and blue planet. Landing on the planet, she saw how it was that it had looked so green from far off in the sky. The forest and grasslands were so beautiful it made her heart swell and grow even more gentle than it had been before. She looked lovingly at the plants as they grew happily in her sight, the green becoming more lush. There were shrubs here, trees there, and over yonder were blossoms in the many colors of light that had come with her from homes so far away. Yellow, orange, blue, purple, white, pink, lemon, lime, azure, aquamarine, and countless in-between shades and hues. "Children, I wish to have children, many, many children," she said. "I want children to love, children to run in the grass, children to sing, children to laugh, and voices to echo on the mountainsides. Children to call and cuddle when I grow old and helpless, children to look after me. Children to be my strength when I grow weak and faint from living, and when the time comes, children to lay me to sleep." Her wish was granted, and there were children. Oh, were there children all around her, one on one side, one on the other, all in front, in and back. There were sons tall, lithe, and so strong they could stand on one leg for hours. And there were sons gentle and kind who would share warmth and compassion even with those who couldn't run very fast or stand for very long. There were daughters tall and strong like their brothers who could run and leap like grassland gazelles all day long and not tire even a little. And there were daughters tender and lovely like flowers, loving like mothers, kind like brothers, and compassionate like fathers. They rallied around the daughter of the sun and called her mother. And so the star, daughter of the sun, who had reigned in the sky with immeasurable brilliance, became the mother of all children born on the green and blue planet. She loved them all and cared for each one, the tall and the short children, the fat children and the lean, the dark and the pale and the golden. She cared for them all, both day and night. There were children who walked and never ran, and children who ran and never walked. There were mine children who wanted everything for themselves. Nothing children who never said more than just one word. Nothing. There were I'll be back children who came and left in a flash. Not me, children, who never admitted they had done anything wrong. I don't know, children. He started it, children. She asked for it, children, who were mean and inconsiderate, and many, many more children. She cared for them and brought them rain and plenty. Knowing the ways of the sky, she also brought them sun and shine. And when it was time for the plants to rest, she brought in autumn and winter to put the plants to sleep. She cared for the children while they were awake and while they slept. She was up earlier than anyone. With a big broom, she would sweep clean, and she would start early with her hoe to grow the food the children needed. For though they were voracious, she always had enough food for them to eat, after all the running, the singing, the hiding and seeking, and the things children love to do all day. The mother of all children was very strong, but the years weighed heavily on her shoulders, and the children of the earth were changed. Once she complained to the sun, "They're all so changed. I have become nothing to them. I doubt they even see me at all." The sun replied, "Remember, they are your children. They did not ask to be brought into the world. Work with them. You will find treasure where you least expect it and when you least expect it." And so she worked, serving her children who had begun to fight over things. They didn't help each other or do anything for themselves, but were always crying and demanding her presence and attention. "Oh, I am hungry. Oh, I am thirsty. Oh, I want this. I want that. Carry me. Cuddle me. You are the mother. You brought us into this world. Take care of us." And the mother of all children healed the hurts and fed the hungry mouths and watered thirsty throats and nursed them into men and women. They wandered off to faraway places, coming back only once in a while and sometimes never at all. By now they had become so mean and wild they even killed each other. Sadness started gnawing at the mother's heart. Where she had once been tall and proud, she was now bent over with the pain and the shame that her children heaped upon her as they blamed her for everything. They had not a single kind word for her, and sadness ate chunks out of her already bleeding heart. And so it was that in the wind that howled and tore trees down, she sang to comfort herself as she worked. She sang in the cool breeze that kissed the day at dawn, as it gently shook the sleeping birds awake to sing the morning chorus. She sang in the drumming of the rain that poured down violently and snatched uncovered land, carrying it away to the sea. She sang in the silent drizzle that fell like feathers on top of the great mountains of the world. And in those places cold enough, she sang in the rain that turned into snow and in the rain that came down in lumps of angry hail. Singing, she would scan the sky, even in broad daylight, as if there were something there that would help her. Then, looking down at her work, she would sing some more. Sometimes when she was out collecting firewood for the forest or on the wooded plains, she would sing of forests, some of which had been torn to bits by her wandering children, who cut trees and took away whole trunks that had taken years to grow, leaving the earth half destroyed and dying. The mother of all children knew that her children did not care for the earth. They dug pits searching for precious metals and left the gaping wounds to bleed. And as she wandered the earth, this was the song she sang. She sang it in small fragments, sometimes aloud and sometimes quietly. You till me and turn me to harvest your heart's desire, till you leave me naked and wounded. Punishing droughts render me barren. Torrential rains tear my flesh, so all who pass by scoff and spit on me. And I endure everything. I, the mother born to give, hold nothing back for myself. I feed the world, and my children look on as I lie poisoned by their land. Because the children's ears were not attuned to the music of the earth, they did not pay attention to what she sang. Only sometimes, when she sang at dusk, only sometimes a heaviness descended on the hearts of the once gentle and compassionate children. As the children scattered far afield still, Each wanted to own more and more space. They got up every day and fought over trees. They fought over glittering rocks. They staked out bits of land. This tree is mine. No, it is mine. Mine, mine, everywhere. They collected the birds from the forest and put them into cages with no room to fly. They scooped the fishes from the waters and put them in containers with no room to swim. They shot the animals just for fun and collected their heads and hides. Sometimes they trapped and gathered animals from the wilderness and shut them up in prisons. They cut the trees in the forest and laid them bare. And so when the earth grew tired and mother of all children grew old and sickly and died, the children did not even know to care. Upon her death, she was granted her second wish, that her remains be clothed in black, and she be allowed to continue serving her children as best as she could. And so even in death, she worked every day and every night, wearing a black robe and a black cape. She worked even harder now that she did not need to sleep. The children still did not care. They kept calling, "Give me, give me, give me," and she continued serving without stopping. Because she was only now a specter, she never said anything. Her songs came in the night and at the break of day only, because the wind found them in the valleys and the hills where their echoes still lingered. The mother took special care of a child that had been born early in her time but could not talk. The child had the most beautiful eyes, and her dark hair, braided and beaded behind her, was strong. Just as her hair grew, her heart also grew, and as her heart grew, so did her legs and arms grow strong. She grew into a lovely young woman. One day, as she was going about her chores, she suddenly stopped and looked up at the mother. Then she spoke for the first time. "Let me help you, Mother. Please sit down and rest." Her voice was kind. After she had spoken, a deafening silence fell. Kindness had long since left the planet, and now everything seemed to stop, though only for a moment. The mother heaved a sigh. "Oh, thank you, my child." Through this one act of kindness, the mother was released. She fell to the ground in a heap and turned to dust. Her work was done. A great wind came and gathered her dust and blew it into the sky to form the moon we see today. So her third wish, that a soft light might shine on her so that she might see her children in the green and blue planet every month of the year, was granted. And to this day, every month, the moon watches over her children fighting and quarreling. She sees her daughters led by the young woman, mending and healing, serving and saving, as she had done before them. But the children of the daughters of the moon still fight, still quarrel, still complain. And the moon, seeing this, has to hide her face and weep before she can bear to take another look, showing only a crescent of her face. Then she turns it more and more until her full face beams with love. On such a night, some catch the love and pass it around. Then the daughters of the moon sing the song of those given to serve, wishing for one more wish, that the children may learn to love their mother once more. Sandy Langston and the Visitor. It was a gray day in the Cape. Rain was coming in clouds over a dark mountain, and the sea was snapping irritably at the harbor wall. Mountain water kept seeping into Sandy Langston's cave and making her firewood wet. After a while, she threw down the bellows and stamped on them in rage. "Go and tell Slanbeck to come and give me a light," she commanded. So out I had to go into the cold and the rain. Maybe I should warn you that Sandy Langston is the meanest, scrawniest witch in the Kalk Bay Mountains. And Slangbeck is a savage old dragon who spends most of his time draped over a pile of loot in his cave. That is, when he's not out flying or smoking with Sandy Langston. And then there is me, Bogham. I'm Sandy Langston's familiar. which means I do most of the dirty work around her cave and that she sometimes rides me on business when she can't persuade Slingbeck to give her a lift. I am a baboon, by the way, which is quite a nice thing to be if you live up on the Kalk Bay Mountains, or even if you don't. It's easy to pick me out from the other roadside baboons since I wear long Persian slippers and sometimes carry a shovel for digging up the "Don't Feed the Baboon" signs put up by all those people who have never had to eat Sandy Langston's cooking. I was not all sure that Slingbeck would agree to come out in such weather, but when I found him in his cave, he was bored and wanted someone to talk to, and I think he felt in the mood for a bowl of Sandy Langston's sour milk. To my relief, Slingbeck decided to walk rather than fly. As he trundled through the bush, leaving a trail like a forestry path, he spread a wing for me to shelter under, like a large leathery umbrella. We walked up and down and around so that Slingbeck could snuffle all around the places that interested him. I didn't mind, since standing against a dragon in wet weather is as good as being beside a hot stove. By the time we got home, Sandy Langston had been kept waiting a good long time and was ready to pick a fight with anything. She hardly seemed at all grateful when Slingbeck stuck his head in and huffed her fire alight. She just started puffing on her black clay pipe without a word of thanks and was soon shrouded in smoke. Slingbeck snatched up a mouthful of old coals and started smoking the way he likes to, and between the two of them, the air in the cave was getting pretty dark and thick. "Wet day to be out," said Slingbeck, hoping for his milk. "Foggy day to be out," snapped Sandy Langston from the corner of her rat-trap mouth. "Got lost, did you? Had to ask directions on Main Road? All the while here I was dying for a smoke and no fire to be had at all." "Now listen, you old hex," said the Slingbeck, beginning to show a bit of fire at the corners of his mouth. "I never get lost, not in time, nor in space, nor in the places between the stars. I'm not taking that from an old hag who needs a baboon to find her way about." By now, the atmosphere in the cave was getting hot with more than smoke, so I edged my way past Slingbeck and out into the cold air. The first thing I saw when my eyes had cleared, apart from Slingbeck's long tail trailing away from the cave, was a very wet-looking foreign gentleman staring with concern at Slingbeck's backside. "If he thinks that's ugly," I thought, "I can't wait until he sees Slingbeck's face, let alone Sandy Langston, who's worse than the dragon at both ends." The foreign gentleman bowed low until only his nose and slippers could be seen behind a huge turban. "Most esteemed sir," he cried, as I scratched myself thoughtfully, wondering what to do with him, "I am an adventurer from the distant land of Persia, and a messenger of emirs and sultans from the rolling desert sands. Alas, I found myself in a state of great distress, unable to make my way back home and report to the Pasha himself." The stranger held up the soggy ruins of a magic carpet, all mildewed and come to pieces in the Cape winter. "To pile sorrow upon sorrow, my preferred means of transport has chosen this moment to divest itself of its powers of flight, not to mention its ability to travel home through time." "Eh," I said, like a simple hairy fellow from the hills, which is what I am, of course. The little gentleman straightened up and realized he was talking to a baboon. "I am lost," he said. "I need directions, and my time-traveling magic carpet has come to bits and won't fly anymore." "Now, why didn't you just say that in the first place?" I said, thinking that anyone who stood around babbling about directions within tail-pulling distance of a dragon needed his head examined. As a rule, the only sensible direction to take is away from the dragon. Of course, I'd normally have chased him off with a good few barks and bites, since Sandy Langston doesn't much care for visitors. But I was mindful of the hissings and shoutings coming from the cave and thought an interesting foreign gentleman would be a good distraction for them, even if he did land up even if he did land up going flappity-flap down the mountain on little web feet. That's what happens to unwelcome visitors in these parts. Sandy Langston makes frogs of them. The foreign gentleman seemed quite reluctant to squeeze past Slangback and into the cave, but I had a good grip on him. "Visitor," I called as we came into the glow of the firelight, in case Sandy Langston was about to do anything embarrassing, like clonk Slangback over the head with her iron pot. Slangback was quite pleased to see the visitor, but Sandy Langston was still as bad-tempered as ever. "Can't find your way back," she hooted mockingly once he'd told his tale with much bowing and groveling. "What kind of explorer do you call yourself? Just turn your back on where you got to and follow your nose back home again. That's what I do. Even this old lizard Slangback can manage it in half the time." Sandy Langston drummed her fingers on her nose as she said this, and I must say it is quite true that Sandy Langston's long snout is perfect for following, since it sticks out like a compass needle and is covered with stiff hairs that twitch like antennae in the dark. "The most enormous nose it is, too, dear madam," gibbered the foreign gentleman before he could stop himself. Frog time, I thought to myself, and would have been right, except Slangback interrupted and saved him from a life of croaking on the lily pads. "I'm getting very fed up at this old hex," he hissed, and that from the heat of his mouth was like a furnace door opening and slamming on each word. "I've known men like this in the days of pirate Dhows. I could take him home with my eyes shut. Do you think you could do better by sniffing out the way with your grand snonker?" "Well, why don't you shut your eyes and we'll find out," snarled Sandy Langston, reaching for the heavy pot. But Slangback wasn't going to be fooled so easily. He kept his eyes open, and Sandy Langston's hand drifted innocently back to her side. "If you're so sure you can guide him home, then I'll take you a bet on it," said Slangback, licking his lips with a forked tongue. "That jar of sour milk against a bright copper pot from my hoard." "Done," snapped Sandy Langston, who had always wanted one of Slangback's pot. "You flap and I'll steer." We all went outside to climb on Slangback. The foreign gentleman had to be helped up quite roughly. "Really, most noble sir and madam, simple directions to the nearest magic carpet repairman is all that is required," he wailed in a thin voice. "Shut up," said Sandy Langston, quite pleasantly for her. "I said nothing at all. As far as I'm concerned, riding Slangback is better than running up the mountains with a witch on your back." Slangback flapped off the mountainside and swooped over the town. The houses looked like toys far below us. Soon we were deep in the gray clouds and flecks of frost glittered in my fur. "Picture clearly where you want to go and hold the picture in your mind. I'll pick it up from there," roared Slangback. "Assuming you have a mind, old hex," he added, not quite low enough so that Sandy Langston thumped him hard on his knobby head. But Sandy Langston had a bet to win, so she let Slangback peer inside her mind. Judging by his shudders, he didn't much care for what she kept there, and when she'd made her picture good and sharp, Sandy Langston leaped forward with her stringy hair whipping in the wind and howled directions in Slangback's ear. "Sand," she shouted. "That's what I'm thinking of. Lots of sand, like they have in Persia." "Well, if you're quite sure," he rumbled, and we disappeared, leaving a dragon-shaped gap in the cloud that slammed shut behind us like a thunderclap. It never takes long to get anywhere when Slangback does that particular trick. There's just a sudden lurch and you're where you want to be. Unless you do something silly, of course, like forgetting to keep your place and time. "Aha," chortled Sandy Langston as we appeared beside a huge sand dune. "Right first time. Sand I aimed for and sand I got." "I'm afraid not, old hex," said Slangback. "It's more or less the right area, but you're off course a bit time-wise. A couple of million years or so, I should think. Says who? Snapped Sandy Langston aggressively. Says him, answered Slingback, nodding at a large Tyrannosaurus Rex that just trundled around the dune and was standing grinning toothily at us. The foreign gentleman pulled his turban down over his eyes and began gnawing frantically on the tassel. I pushed my head past him and barked in Sandy Langston's ear. Think of big turbans, I advised urgently, hoping we'd hit more of modern times. Run, she shouted at Slangbeck, who needed to be flying before he can play his disappearing trick. Slangbeck scuttled to the top of the dune. Right behind us we could hear the doof, doof, doof of heavy dinosaur footsteps as Slangbeck launched himself on spread wings. He circled once more over the dunes, looking down at the running dinosaur. I noticed you didn't try clonking that one with a pot, he remarked to Sandy Langston. The mistress was too busy getting her thoughts together to answer. After a moment, she leaned forward again and howled directions against the blast of wind. I hope she had the right picture in mind this time and wasn't thinking of anything unpleasant. When we reappeared, we were still flying, and I was glad that Slingback was playing it safe. We were high above a blue ocean, as far from the sand as we could possibly be. There was a foreign smell in the air, and the sun was brassy and strong, but I didn't see any big turbans. Perhaps Sandy Langston's concentration had slipped at the last minute, and she had put us off course again. So where are the turbans, I asked, but got no answer from Sandy Langsbeck or Slangbeck. Excuse me, said the foreign gentleman uncertainly. I seem to see another dragon or two over there. I could feel Slangbeck's sides grow warmer with interest as he dipped a wing and swooped across the sea. After a while, we could see that they were not proper dragons like Slangbeck, but just brightly painted wooden boats with fiercely carved dragon faces and sails ribbed like Slangbeck's wings. Chinese junks, trumpeted Slangbeck, not sounding as disappointed as I thought he'd be. Dragon boats, they call them. I'll show you a thing or two now, Sandy Langston. He swooped up and down ostentatiously until we were seen. A great commotion burst out of the ships, and swarms of men appeared from below. They knelt down and began knocking their heads on the deck. Big hats, I cried, because some of them were wearing huge round hats like trash can lids. Wrong sort, Sandy Langston sourly. I was thinking of turbans. Mine must have wandered just a little bit. What with that other big lizard and all, why are they banging their heads like that? Slangbeck started laughing, a horrible sound. Snurf, snurf. They're kowtowing. It's an act of worship, dragon worship. Sandy Langston, in case you were thinking it's for you. Now that's what I call respect. Could do with more of that where I come from, I can tell you. We kneeled down to bow like that in Persia, chipped in the foreign gentleman ingratiatingly. He squeaked as Sandy Langston turned slowly around, and he found himself looking into her beady eyes from a range of about 2 nose lengths. Not to dragons, of course, he gibbered. No, ha ha ha, no, not to dragons. You see, we shoot arrows at, He stuffed the tassel of his turban back in his mouth and chomped at it energetically. The thump of Slangbeck's wing beats faltered as he thought about that bit. He craned his neck back until he was staring at us upside down. The folk on the boat loved that maneuver, but I wasn't quite so keen, since it gave me a new angle on all the ugly parts I had more or less become used to. So you want to take him back to where all the arrows are? Said Slangbeck to Sandy Langston. Don't be a sissy, said Sandy Langston, who was determined to get her copper pot. Anyway, just think of the good impression you'll make coming back with this fellow. It might stop them from shooting at dragons for good. I know a better way to stop them from shooting at dragons, muttered Slangbeck, turning around again. This is your last try, old Hex. After this, the milk is mine, and so is our little arrow shooter, he added as an afterthought. He made a few last swoops over the dragon boats while Sandy Langston summoned her concentration. Think of proper turbans, I advised her. Sandy Langston shrilled her commands, and we disappeared from the big blue sky above the boats like a burst of fireworks. Slangbeck launched gouts of flame to keep the sailors religious. Bullseye, gloated Sandy Langston as we burst into existence over a city of tall towers, all ending in points like onions. It was surrounded by sand, and there were a lot of palm trees and men in turbans like the foreign gentlemen's. The best clue was a huge sign on the dunes near a landing strip for flying carpets. Welcome to Persia, it said. Something went whoop as it shot past us, and a nasty sharp sound it was, too. I looked up to see a strippy arrow arcing up against the sun. Lots more men with bows were running out on rooftops and taking aim at us. Land so I can deliver him, howled Sandy Langston, her mind full of copper pots. Land and deliver him yourself, grunted Slingbeck, hammering upward as fast as he could flap. A whole stream of whips were coming past us now, and Slingbeck was swerving like a swallow to avoid them. I want him home on the ground, screamed Sandy Langston, who knew Slingbeck could be counting on to weasel out of a bet if given any excuse at all. I don't have to land for that, he shouted, which means hold tight. House was, he shouted, which means hold tight in Afrikaans. Now Sandy Langston and I understood him very well and clung on tightly, but while Afrikaans has a few Arabic words in it, how and was aren't two of them, and when Slangbeck rolled over on his back, the foreign gentleman disappeared with a whoosh. No, screamed the foreign gentleman, seeing the town spiraling up at him. No, screamed Sandy Langston, seeing her copy pot disappear like mist. Quick as a flash, we snatched for him. I got the heels, and Sandy Langston got the turban, and for a moment he swung between us like a hammock. Then his feet shot free of his slippers, and he was unwinding downward as his turban uncoiled, with Sandy Langston cursing onto the end, and the foreign gentleman going down like a yo-yo on the other. The last I saw of him, he had his arms wrapped around one of the pointy domes and was yelling for the bowman to shoot us, which I think was a bit ungrateful considering he did get home after all, and that we had just saved him from going splat on the street below. Sandy Langston shook the long strip of turban at him like a banner, and I waved him goodbye with his slippers, but he didn't wave back. Of course, the moment we got home, Slangbeck did try to weasel out of the bet, claiming that 3 tries were too many, and leaving someone hanging from a tower didn't count as taking him home. Now, Sandy Langston had an answer to that. More than a few hot words were flying in the cave by the time I squeezed out past Langbeck again. So come to think of it, things were back to where they were when I found the foreign gentleman. Or a bit worse, if anything, with Slangbeck and Sandy Langston going at it hammer and tongs inside the cave and me standing out in the rain. Mind you, I did get some fine Persian slippers out of it, and Sandy Langston got quite a lot of turban cloth, and old Slangbeck even got worshipped by the folks on the boat. But on the whole, I don't think all the trouble was quite worth it, so I'm not going to try anything so clever with the next visitor. I'm just going to bite him like I'm supposed to, and Slangbeck and Sandy Langston can sort out their own problems. Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the folk tales. They're definitely a little different, but anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit here at the end about why I did the things that I did. So, looking at the 2 pages, I really wanted to pull in those turquoise colors, and I didn't feel like it was quite enough to just have it on the border. And so I went ahead and colored the palm trees in the turquoise. And I think it really works because, none of these pages are ultra realistic. My apologies about Ellie. the neighbor dog is out for their walk, and, you know, she feels the need to stand in the window and greet them every day. Every day. Have you guys seen The Family Guy where the dog is at the window and there's like a squirrel out there, and he's like, I told you this all yesterday. And he's like yelling at the squirrel. And it just makes me laugh every time I think about it, because it's like, you know, that they're like, hey, get off of my yard. I told you to all of this yesterday. Why are you here again? And it just cracks me up. But anyway, I digress. We were talking about turquoise palm trees. You know, I joke with Christine because Dee Dee Willingham, who is a YouTube artist here on the channel or on YouTube, said something I thought was really cool. She said, you are the boss of your own coloring book. And I know I've said it before, but it's kind of a little joke I have. But it's really true. I think sometimes we get wrapped up in like, well, palm trees are green and, you know, yada, yada. So we have to do that. And I'm enjoying just doing whatever, right? Okay, so I also wanted to pull in some of the orange and some of the red. And I was looking around thinking, well, how do I do this? And I thought, what if on all these little hieroglyphs that I just put in this bright orange and then some red in them? Well, I started with the orange right here, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. It just makes them kind of stand out a little bit. Now, I had used, I think, the dark umber to kind of go in and put a little shadowing shading, which makes them kind of pop off the page a little bit too. But I'm really enjoying this orangey color. So when I get done with that, I thought, well, we've got that red, not a lot of red, but it's a pretty big highlight there on the left-hand side. So I thought, well, what if I color these little palm tree nuts? Or what are they? Well, anyway, these things, what if I color those red? And then, you know, add a little bit of the orange too, just to kind of blend it out a little bit. And then I sat there and I thought, what would it look like if I went in and added a little bit of red to these hieroglyphs? And I really, really like it. And so I feel like it's a nice finishing touch. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this color along, and I'm really enjoying working in this book, and we're making our progress. This is 2 pages. I'm hoping to maybe at least get 1 more page done this month, if not 2. We shall see. But make sure you do the YouTubey things, and make sure you have some fun and be the boss of your own coloring book and color things the way you want. Now, I am not going to color the feathery fronds of the palm trees. And as far as the sun, I put very little coloring in it. So use a light hand when you do it. But otherwise, I'm just going to add a few more details, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.